School Watch tonight, the story of a 7th grader from Salinas who claims to have made a major discovery about President Obama. She and her grandfather say that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president. We get more tonight from Action News reporter Felix Cortez, who's live in our Salinas newsroom.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent the summer, really all summer, tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
Well, first we start off with George Washington at the top, and then it goes to John Adams, Thomas Jefferson.
11-year-old BridgeAnne D'Avignon says she's made a first-of-its-kind discovery that President Obama and all the presidents before him, with the exception of one, are related and descendants of a former king of England.
No, they are all cousins, and they're grandsons of John Lackland.
D'Avignon says she spent countless hours on the internet over the summer researching the lineage of our presidents, a project that started with her trying to trace her own family tree.
But I'm the first historian to do all the presidents. I'm very glad I got this done, and I think it will turn out to be a success.
The Monte Vista Christian 7th grader has written President Obama to tell him the presidents before him are his cousins. She hopes to present this family tree chart personally to the president. But BridgeAnne has her skeptics, including this reporter. Her biggest supporter and firm believer that Obama is a descendant of a former king of England is no doubt her mother.
If you have a child, and they 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 have a child,
Like names change.
all she's saying is this guy is the great, 25th, 27th, depending on what line it is. He created all this family. So do I believe it? Yes. It's hard, but it's true.
Well, Mom said it. Hard to believe, but you got to give the little girl an A+ for at least trying to do that and trying to accomplish that feat. And by the way, BridgeAnne has concluded she's the 11th cousin of President Obama. Dan, Aaron.
All right, very good. Thank you, Felix. So who is the one that President Barack Obama is not related to, according to the 7th grader? Martin Van Buren, 8th President of the United States, first U.S. president born in the U.S. Van Buren was a widowed farmer and tavern keeper from New York who helped form the Democratic Party. He served one term as president. His ancestry is Dutch, and according to the Salinas 7th grader, all of the other presidents are of English ancestry.
We recently came across this incredible real fact on a Snapple bottle cap. Franklin Roosevelt was related to 5 U.S. presidents by blood and 6 by marriage. It seemed too good to be true. There have only ever been 45 presidents. Could Franklin Delano Roosevelt really be related to almost 25% of them? We reached out to the FDR Library to find out more. Here's what we learned. On the Roosevelt side, he was related to just 2. Theodore Roosevelt, his 5th cousin, and Martin Van Buren. On the Delano side, he was related to 9 more. John Adams, James Madison, John Quincy Adams, William Henry Harrison, Zachary Taylor, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Benjamin Harrison, and William Howard Taft. But he's also related to George Washington by marriage. So that's really 12 in all. More than 25% of all U.S. presidents. Snapple was pretty close. FDR was also related to these famous historical figures: Winston Churchill, his 8th cousin once removed, Jefferson Davis, and Robert E. Lee. What a legacy.
It is no secret that President Obama comes from a diverse background. This morning we have new information about his ancestors that you have not heard anywhere else.
This surprising connection goes all the way back to the earliest days of colonial America. Bill Plant is at the White House with that story. Bill, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gail. Well, you know, we've already learned that Barack Obama is related, however distantly, to people as diverse as Warren Buffett, Sarah Palin, Rush Limbaugh, and George W. Bush. But now the researchers at ancestry.com have discovered startling new evidence, a connection in his mother's family tree. President Obama's diverse roots from Kenya to Kansas are widely known, but now researchers have found a new link.
President Obama is the 11th great-grandson of John Punch, who was the first documented African to be enslaved for life in the American colonies.
Joseph Shumway of Ancestry.com says the president's white mother is a direct descendant of the first known slave in the American colonies through a family by the name of Bunch.
We found that through DNA testing done by members of the Bunch family, that their direct ancestors are of sub-Saharan African origin. Eventually, we were able to make a connection with the earliest Bunch family members and a gentleman by the name of John Punch.
In 1640, John Punch, an African, was a servant in Virginia who escaped, was caught, and sentenced to remain in bondage to his master for life. As for the difference in the names, Punch with a P versus Bunch with a B, researchers say that's not unusual, that early record keepers wrote names as they sounded. Though records are incomplete, the Ancestry.com genealogists say the slave John Punch is the only likely person to have been the father of John Bunch sometime before 1637. John Bunch's mother was white, and so was his wife, which means that President Obama descends from the first known black and white couple who left traceable descendants. How certain are you of this conclusion?
We're extremely confident in the conclusion that we've reached.
What were the racial attitudes like in colonial Virginia?
At the time, in the early 1600s, the racial attitudes in colonial Virginia were quite a bit different than they later came to be. Racial marriage wasn't as looked down upon until about the 1660s and on upwards into the early 1700s did laws become in place to prevent that from happening. The Bunch family, over the generations, continued to intermarry with white people and just became white for all intents and purposes.
John Bunch I in Ancestry.com's Obama family tree is the first in a 7-generation line of Bunches, originally in Virginia, moving to Tennessee, Arkansas, and finally to Kansas, where President Obama's great-grandmother, Leona McCurry, his grandmother, Madeline Payne, and his mother, Stanley Ann Dunham, were born.
I'm the son of a black man from Kenya and a white woman from Kansas.
Race is a subject the president has dealt with all his life, and never more urgently than when he broke with his former pastor, Reverend Jeremiah Wright, in 2008 over Wright's divisive racial views.
The issues that have surfaced over the last few weeks reflect the complexities of race in this country that we've never really worked through.
David Marinus, author of a new Obama biography, did extensive research into the Obama family for his book.
At that point, it included Luo, the tribal clan of the Obamas, and English and Welsh and Irish and Scottish and German from the white side of his family. And now we're discovering something more.
Marinus, who traveled to Kenya and Indonesia in search of the influences that shaped Barack Obama, says the president's diverse roots make him hard to categorize.
Because of the color of his skin and his father's background, he was African American. But culturally, he was not. He had to learn it. He's never been easy to pigeonhole. That's part of the attraction and mystery of Barack Obama.
The Ancestry.com team did 2 years of research to puzzle this out. They looked through thousands of pages of colonial records. They got the DNA from the Bunch family. And even without the documented connection to John Punch, they're very certain of their finding about the president's slave ancestor on his mother's side. Gail, Charlie?
Amazing what you can find. Thank you, Bill. Amazing what you can find, Charlie, when you start digging around the family tree.
You know what interests me most, though, about all this is that whatever the life that this president or any other future president has, how did it influence who he is or who she is in terms of how they see the world? You know,
somebody did one on me recently and said that I was distantly related to Martha Stewart.
I didn't know that.
No, me neither, and neither did she. Still trying to figure that one out.
You may recall the discovery that President Barack Obama and former Vice President Dick Cheney are related. You can now add some more curious branches to the Obama family tree. It turns out the 2008 presidential election was a family affair. The folks at Ancestry.com say the president is a distant relative to Sarah Palin. Not only that, they also say he's got a connection to radio host Rush Limbaugh. And to top it off, apparently Obama and former President George W. Bush are relatives. A genealogist says Obama and Palin are 10th cousins through a common ancestor who lived in the 17th century. As for Limbaugh, he's also a 10th cousin of the president, one time removed through a common ancestor who was a large landowner in Virginia. And when it comes to Bush, he and Obama are 11th cousins. It's unlikely, though, that there will be any kind of extended family reunion anytime soon. Diane Kepley, The Associated Press.
A history of American presidents. The President of the United States, the most powerful office in the world. From George Washington to George W. Bush, it is steeped in history and tradition. And every 4 years, on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, Americans elect their commander-in-chief. Perhaps the most historic vote was in 1860. Abraham Lincoln was elected America's first black president. A remarkable moment, and a far cry from the early 1800s when U.S. elections were rather unruly affairs. In 1828, Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams met in a pasture, wearing only tights and decorative wigs, to decide the presidency in a fistfight. Though Jackson soundly beat Adams, both men called for electoral reform, admitting that during the fight, they almost kissed. In the 20th century, history was made. In 1936, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected America's first black president. FDR was hugely popular, but it's worth noting he almost lost the 1940 election to a third-party candidate, Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit was ahead in the polls, only to see his lead vanish after a well-attended debate where he displayed an untimely erection. A decade later, in 1952, Dwight D. Eisenhower left his job as the original Mr. Peanut to become America's first black president. The 1960s were a dark time in U.S. politics, especially the day when President John F. Kennedy jammed his finger playing touch football in Kennebunkport, Maine. Since then, the Secret Service has had a zero-tolerance rule on presidential horseplay. Over the next 40 years, nothing happened. Then, in 1998, history was made. Morgan Freeman was elected America's first black president. 10 years later, Barack Obama was elected America's first Hawaiian president.
President Obama's story is well known. His father from Kenya, his mother from the United States. But Ancestry.com says it has mapped out the Obama family tree going back 11 generations with stunning conclusion. Anastasia Harmon is the company's lead family historian.
So our conclusion is that President Obama, the first African-American president, is the 11th great-grandson of the first documented enslaved African in what would become the United States.
The link is made not from his father's side, but from his mother, Ann Dunham's lineage. She was connected back to a man named John Punch. Records show Punch, who lived in Virginia, had children with a white woman. Those children later became known as the Bunch family. The findings of the 2-year study are now posted on the company's website. So how did the research team figure this out?
As we're going, from President Obama to his mom and grandmother and great-grandmother, you're looking for like birth and marriage and death records, all those kind of records. As we get farther back in time, though, they weren't kept, or they've been destroyed over time. The Civil War, a lot of records are destroyed, fires, floods, and things like that. So we start looking at what we call surviving records, church records, land records. And so when we get really far back into, like, here, John Bunch III, who's born in 1680, from here on out, we're looking at land records.
University of Maryland history professor Ira Berlin says all of this is perfectly plausible because there was a time when white indentured servants and black slaves freely intermingled.
They work together, they sleep together, they play together. Eventually they have children together. The status of those children follow the status of their mother. That is, if your mother is white, then you will be free.
Lineage has become a fascinating side topic of this political season, from Mitt Romney's Mormon roots to the president's ancestry. But what matters, says CNN contributor Roland Martin, is not so much the past, but the future.
This is not going to mean anything when it comes to voters. This is simply a matter of what his personal history is. Keep in mind, you can be Clarence Thomas and you can have a very clear African-American background going back generations, but do the policies that you articulate today, do they resonate with black voters?